You know what the problem with humans is? They don't listen. And I mean really, truly, spectacularly, do not listen. My name is Krell, and I'm what you'd call a military analyst for the Vortan Collective. Well, I was, before the humans happened. Before everything we thought we knew about warfare, strategy, and basic common sense got thrown out the nearest airlock. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you're sitting in the most advanced tactical command center in 3 galaxies. Holographic displays everywhere, real-time data from 17 different star systems, and enough computing power to simulate the heat death of the universe. Now imagine all of that telling you the exact same thing, repeatedly, with absolute certainty. The humans will surrender in 48 hours. Spoiler alert, they didn't. It started 6 months ago when the collective decided that the Sol system would make an excellent addition to our territory. Nothing personal, you understand, just business. Standard protocol. We'd done it hundreds of times before. You show up with an overwhelming fleet, demonstrate your technological superiority, give them the whole resistance is futile speech, and boom. New members of the collective, everyone wins. The conquered species gets access to advanced technology, galactic trade networks, and protection. We get resources, strategic positioning, and another tick mark on the expansion chart. Simple, right? Wrong. So incredibly, catastrophically wrong. Commander Vex, my direct superior, gathered the senior staff on the flagship Retribution 3 days before first contact. She was old, even by Vortan standards, had overseen 47 successful integrations, 0 failures. She had this way of clicking her mandibles when she was confident, which was always click, click, click. The preliminary scans are complete, she announced, her 3 eyes scanning the holographic display of Earth. The human civilization is technologically primitive. They've barely left their own planet. Nuclear weapons are their most advanced armament. This will be concluded before the lunar cycle completes. My colleague Thren, always the optimist, chuckled. Shall we prepare the integration protocols? Already done, Vex clicked again. I estimate 72 hours from initial contact to formal surrender, possibly less. I should mention that I actually liked Vex, past tense, because what came next changed everything. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of their solar system. 200 warships, each one capable of glassing a planet. We broadcast the standard message in every language they had. The translation computers had worked overtime on that one. Humans apparently couldn't agree on anything, including how to communicate with each other. The message was straightforward. Surrender peacefully. Join the collective, benefit from our advanced civilization, resist, and face annihilation. We gave them 48 hours to respond. They responded in 6. I was monitoring the communications array when the transmission came through. A single human female appeared on screen. Dark hair pulled back, uniform covered in colorful patches, and eyes that looked like she'd already decided we were a problem she was going to solve. This is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the United Earth Defense Fleet, she said, and I swear there was a smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. We've received your message and have reached a unanimous decision. Here it comes, I thought. The surrender. The beginning of the end. Go to hell. The transmission cut. For exactly 3 seconds nobody in the command center moved. Then Vex's mandibles started clicking, but this time faster, more agitated. This is not in the predictive models, she said, which in Vortan terms was basically screaming in panic. Run the scenarios again. Check for communication errors. Perhaps their language has nuances we missed. Thren was already working. No errors, Commander. The message was clear. It was a rejection, an aggressive rejection. Impossible. Vex pulled up the analysis data. They have no chance of victory. Our computational models show a 99.7% certainty of their defeat. They must understand this. They must. But here's the thing about humans. Math doesn't scare them. Logic doesn't constrain them. And certainty, well, they take that as a personal challenge. Vex ordered the fleet to advance. A show of force, she called it. Once the humans saw our ships up close, once they witnessed our weapons systems, once they truly understood the gap between our civilizations, they'd reconsider. They reconsidered, all right. They reconsidered where to aim their missiles. The attack came from everywhere and nowhere. Small, fast craft erupted from the dark side of their moon. Weapons platforms we hadn't detected powered up throughout the asteroid belt. And then, from Earth itself, they launched something that made our sensors go absolutely haywire. "What is that?" Vex demanded. "I was trying to process the data. It's a... Wait, that can't be right. It's a nuclear weapon mounted on... I think it's mounted on a chemical rocket?" Thren looked at me like I'd grown a fourth eye. "That's absurd. Chemical propulsion hasn't been viable for warfare in millennia. Tell that to the 15 of them heading toward our forward ships. The weapons were primitive, slow, and completely unexpected. Our defensive systems were designed to intercept plasma torpedoes moving at significant fractions of light speed. These human missiles were barely faster than their own scout ships. They were so slow that our computers initially classified them as debris. 3 ships were hit before we adjusted our targeting protocols, and that, right there, that was when everything changed. Because those ships didn't just take damage. They were destroyed. Completely, utterly destroyed. By weapons that shouldn't have been able to scratch our shields. "How?" Vex whispered, all the confidence drained from her voice. The answer came 2 hours later, after our science teams analyzed the attack. The humans had done something we'd never seen before. They designed their weapons specifically not to penetrate shields, but to get close enough to trigger proximity detonation. The nuclear explosions occurred inside our defensive perimeter, where the shields were weakest, designed only to deflect micro-debris. It was clever. Insanely, brilliantly, stupidly clever. "This changes nothing," Vex announced, but her mandibles weren't clicking anymore. "They've had their lucky strike. We adapt, we press forward, we finish this." We adapted. The humans adapted faster. For every tactical adjustment we made, they countered within hours. They used their primitive satellites as improvised weapons, crashing them into our ships. They hacked our communication networks using methods our systems couldn't even recognize as attacks. They sent transmissions that were just noise, pointless noise, except it wasn't pointless because it kept our analysts busy trying to decode messages that didn't exist. And then there were the pilots. I'll never forget the first time I saw human pilots in action. Their fighters were jokes by our standards, held together by, I kid you not, metal rivets and welds. The canopies were transparent aluminum, which we stopped using 6,000 years ago. The weapons were kinetic, ballistic, practically medieval. But the pilots, oh, the pilots. They flew like they were dancing, like they were playing, like death was just another move in a game they'd invented. Our combat drones, with their perfect AI targeting and split-second response times, couldn't keep up. Because the humans didn't fly logically, they flew emotionally, instinctively. They made decisions that our computers couldn't predict, because the decisions made no sense, until they worked. "Pull back," I suggested to Vex, after we'd lost 30 ships in as many hours. "We need to reassess." "Pull back?" Her mandibles quivered. "We're the Vortan Collective. We don't pull back from a species that still uses combustion engines. This species that still uses combustion engines just destroyed 30 of our warships. A temporary setback. Temporary. Right, that's what we kept telling ourselves. By day 7, the humans had destroyed or disabled 40% of our fleet. 40%. We'd gone from an easy victory to the worst military disaster in collective history. The analysis computers kept spitting out the same conclusion. Victory is assured, the humans will surrender. Except they weren't surrendering, they were winning. I was reviewing casualty reports when Thren approached my station. His blue skin had taken on a pale, almost translucent quality. "Not a good sign. Krell," he said quietly. "Have you noticed the pattern?" "Which pattern? The pattern where we keep losing? That pattern?" "No. The pattern in human casualties. They're disproportionate among their military forces. Over 90% of their deaths are soldiers, pilots, naval personnel. Their civilians have been almost completely evacuated from combat zones." I pulled up the data. He was right. So, they're protecting their non-combatants. That's standard. Is it? Thren's eyes met mine. When have we ever seen a species prioritize civilian safety over military positioning? They're handicapping themselves, giving up strategic advantages, just to keep their non-combatants safe. That's inefficient. That's humanity. Commander Vex called a senior staff meeting on day 10. She looked older somehow, which shouldn't have been possible. We don't age that quickly. New intelligence has emerged, she began, her voice flat. The humans have been broadcasting messages to their entire planet. Public messages. We've translated them. She played one. A human male, older, with white hair and lines around his eyes. He wore the same kind of uniform as Admiral Vasquez. My fellow humans, he said, we have been asked to surrender, to submit to a force that claims superiority through technological advantage and overwhelming numbers. They have offered us safety if we accept subjugation. They have threatened extinction if we resist. He paused, and something that might have been a smile crossed his face. Our answer remains unchanged. We are humanity. We walked out of caves with sharp sticks and conquered a world. We split the atom when they said it couldn't be done. We stood on our moon and looked back at our home. We have faced ice ages, plagues, wars, disasters, and ourselves, and we're still here. Another pause. We will not surrender. We will not submit. We will fight with every weapon we have, with every ship we can fly, with every last breath in our bodies. Not because we think we'll win, but because that's who we are. That's what we do. We refuse to go quietly. We refuse to kneel. We refuse to understand why we should do anything other than what we've always done. Survive, adapt, overcome. The transmission ended. Vex stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Then, finally, she spoke. Tactical assessment, Krell. I pulled up the latest projections, knowing she wouldn't like them. At current attrition rates, the fleet will be combat ineffective within 3 weeks. The humans show no signs of weakening. If anything, they're getting more effective. They're learning our tactics faster than we can develop new ones. Recommendation. This was it. The moment that would define my entire career. Possibly my entire life. Withdraw. The word hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. Withdraw? Vex's voice was barely above a whisper. We've never withdrawn. The collective has never retreated from a pre-spacefaring species. With respect, Commander, we've never encountered a species like this before. Thren cleared his throat. I concur with Krell's assessment. These humans, they're not fighting a logical war. They're fighting an emotional one, and emotions apparently don't care about our probability matrices. Vex was silent for what felt like an eternity. Then she did something I'd never seen a Vortan commander do. She laughed. It was a bitter, harsh sound, but it was laughter. They refused to understand why they should surrender, she said. And we refused to retreat because we couldn't understand why they wouldn't. Both sides trapped by incomprehension. Commander, prepare withdrawal protocols, Vex ordered. We're leaving. The humans can keep their planet, their system, their ridiculous chemical rockets, and their impossible pilots. What do we tell the collective? I asked. Vex's mandibles clicked one final time, slow and deliberate. We tell them the truth. We found a species we couldn't integrate. A species that would rather die fighting than live subjugated. We tell them we found humanity. The withdrawal took 3 days, 3 very tense days where we expected the humans to press their advantage, to chase us down, to finish what they'd started. They didn't. Admiral Vasquez sent a final transmission as we prepared to jump to faster than light. We didn't want this war, she said, but we'll finish any fight someone else starts. Take this message back to your collective. Earth is off limits. Humanity is off limits. We're not interested in your empire, your technology, or your certainty. We're interested in being left alone. Can you understand that? I understood it perfectly. You'd think the story would end there, right? Noble retreat, lessons learned, everyone goes home. Yeah, well, you'd be wrong. Because the Collective Council doesn't do retreats. They do strategic repositioning pending further analysis, which is just a fancy way of saying they couldn't accept what happened. I was summoned to the council chambers exactly 6 days after we limped back to Vortan Prime. Me, Vex, Thren, and about 40 other officers who'd participated in what was now officially called the Soul Incident. Not the Soul Defeat, not the disaster, the incident. As if we'd accidentally spilled something rather than gotten our tails handed to us by a species that thought duct tape was advanced engineering. The council chamber was designed to intimidate, towering walls of obsidian stone, seats arranged in ascending circles so the council members literally looked down on you, and lighting that somehow made everyone except the council members look guilty of something. I'd been here twice before for commendations. This was different. High Counselor Maven spoke first. She was ancient, even by Vortan standards, and had a reputation for being absolutely unmovable on matters of collective doctrine. Commander Vex, Maven's voice echoed through the chamber. Explain to this council how a fleet of 200 warships, representing the pinnacle of collective military might, was repelled by a species that has not achieved faster-than-light capability. Vex stood straight, her mandibles perfectly still. High Counselor, the humans employed unconventional tactics that our predictive models failed to account for. Unconventional. Maven let the word hang there. Is that what we're calling defeat now? Unconventional? With respect, High Counselor, it was not a defeat. It was a strategic withdrawal to prevent unnecessary casualties. Strategic withdrawal. Maven's three eyes narrowed. We have integrated 473 species into the collective over the past millennium. Not once have we withdrawn. Not once have we retreated. Not once have we been forced to abandon an integration operation. Thren stepped forward, which was either brave or suicidal. Probably both. High Counselor, perhaps that record needed to end. The humans are fundamentally different from any species we've encountered. Different how? They're irrational, I said, and immediately regretted it when every eye in the chamber focused on me. I mean, not irrational in a disorganized way, irrational in a weaponized way. They make decisions based on factors our analysis can't quantify. Pride, spite, stubbornness, something they call grit. They'd rather die fighting than live safely under our protection. Maven leaned forward. Then they're fools. Perhaps, Vex interjected, but they're fools who defeated us. The chamber erupted in clicking mandibles, the Vortan equivalent of shocked gasps. You don't admit defeat in the council chamber, ever. Maven silenced the room with a gesture. This council does not accept the premise of defeat. The operation was poorly executed, clearly, but the objective remains valid. The Sol system contains resources we need. The humans possess genetic diversity that would benefit the collective. Their strategic location makes them valuable. Oh no, I knew where this was going. Therefore, Maven continued, we will prepare a second integration operation. Larger fleet, better intelligence, improved tactics. We will study the recordings from the first operation, identify human weaknesses, and exploit them. Vex's mandibles started clicking rapidly. High Counselor, I strongly advise against this course of action. Your advice is noted and rejected, Commander. You are dismissed from military service, effective immediately. The chamber went silent. Dismissal wasn't just losing your job, it was losing your status, your family connections, your entire identity within Vortan society. It was social death. Vex didn't flinch. Understood, High Counselor. Before I go, may I speak freely? You may not. I'm going to anyway, Vex's voice carried through the chamber. The humans will destroy the second fleet, and the third, and the fourth, because you're not fighting their technology or their numbers, you're fighting their nature. And nature doesn't negotiate. Security escorted her out. I never saw her again. Maven turned to the rest of us. Who among you is willing to command? The second integration operation. Silence. Beautiful, terrifying silence. Finally, a voice spoke up. I will. We all turned. It was Zahn, one of the youngest commanders in the fleet, brilliant strategist, completely by the book, and apparently suicidal. Excellent, Maven clicked approvingly. Commander Zahn, you have 6 months to prepare. Fleet size will be 400 ships. You will have access to all analysis from the first operation. You will not fail, Zahn saluted. I will not fail, High Counselor. I wanted to scream at him, to shake him, to explain that confidence wasn't armor and determination wasn't a shield. But what was the point? He wouldn't listen. Just like we hadn't listened when the humans told us to leave. Just like the council wouldn't listen to reason. The meeting ended, and we were dismissed. I caught up with Thren in the corridor outside. This is insane, I said quietly. Define insane. Thren's skin had gone even paler. Using the same approach that failed before and expecting different results? Yeah, that fits. We have to do something. Like what? We're analysts, Krell, not council members, not decision makers. We observe, we report, we get ignored. Then we find someone who won't ignore us. That's how I ended up in the underground research facility 3 levels below the official science buildings. And when I say underground, I don't mean beneath the ground. I mean beneath the parts of society that polite Vortans pretended didn't exist. Dr. Fenn was a xenopsychologist, which meant she studied how alien species thought and behaved. It also meant she was considered slightly crazy by most of Vortan society, because why would you want to understand aliens when you could just conquer them? She was also the only person I could think of who might actually listen. Her laboratory was chaos given physical form, holographic displays showing psychological profiles of hundreds of species, physical artifacts from dozens of worlds, books, actual physical books, which nobody used anymore, except apparently Dr. Fenn. Krell, she greeted me, without looking up from whatever she was studying. I was wondering when you'd show up. You were expecting me? You were part of the Soul operation. You witnessed something that challenged everything the collective believes about conquest and integration. Of course, you'd come looking for someone who might understand. She finally looked up, her 3 eyes sharp and focused. The question is, what do you want me to do about it? Help me stop the second operation. She laughed. Actually laughed. Stop the collective council? That's adorable, also impossible. Then help me understand the humans. Help Zahn understand them. If he goes in with the same assumptions we had, he'll fail even harder. Fenn considered this. What makes you think Zahn wants to understand? From what I've heard, he's a true believer. Facts, logic, overwhelming force. That's his doctrine. Then I'll make him want to understand. But I need information first. For the next 3 months, I practically lived in Fenn's laboratory. We analyzed every second of footage from the Sol operation. We studied human history, going back thousands of their years. We examined their art, their literature, their wars, their triumphs and disasters. And slowly, horrifyingly, I began to understand. They're traumatized, Fenn explained one night, about 2 months into my research. Their entire species history is one long string of near-extinction events, followed by improbable survival. Ice ages that should have killed them. Diseases that should have wiped them out. Wars that should have destroyed their civilization. They've been on the edge of oblivion so many times that they've internalized the concept of impossible odds. So they don't fear extinction? Oh, they fear it. They just don't let fear stop them. It's the difference between rational fear and operational fear. They acknowledge the fear, then act. Anyway, I pulled up the footage of Admiral Vasquez's first transmission. When she told us to go to hell, she knew we could destroy Earth. Of course she did. She just didn't care. Or rather, she cared more about defiance than survival. That's the key to understanding humans. They have a hierarchy of values that defies logic, freedom over safety, pride over pragmatism, spite over self-preservation. That's not sustainable. It shouldn't be. But somehow it is, because every time they should have failed, someone refused to give up. Every time they should have surrendered, someone chose to fight. It's irrational, it's inefficient, it's absolutely magnificent. The way Fenn said that last word made me uncomfortable. You admire them. I admire any species that survives against impossible odds, don't you? I did, actually, which was probably treason, but at that point, I was past caring. I finally got a meeting with Zahn 4 months into his preparation. He agreed to see me only because I'd technically survived the first operation and might have tactical insights. His office was pristine, everything organized, categorized, optimized. He had holographic displays showing the new fleet composition, weapon loadouts, tactical formations. It all looked very impressive. It all looked exactly like what we'd done the first time. Analyst Krell, he greeted me formally. What tactical recommendations do you have for the second integration operation? Don't go. His mandibles clicked in confusion. Excuse me? Don't launch the second operation. The humans will destroy your fleet just like they destroyed ours. I've reviewed all the data from your operation. Your tactical errors are obvious. You underestimated their unconventional weapons deployment. You failed to adapt quickly enough to their asymmetric warfare strategies. You allowed emotional factors to cloud your judgment. Emotional factors? I couldn't help but laugh. Commander, the humans don't operate on logic. Every decision they make is filtered through emotional factors: honor, revenge, protection of their own, defiance for the sake of defiance. You can't fight that with better tactics. Of course you can. Emotional responses are predictable once you understand the triggers. Really? Tell me, Commander, what emotional trigger makes someone fly a ship directly into enemy fire to protect a damaged vessel full of strangers? What logical calculation explains sacrificing 3 ships to save 1? What predictive model accounts for a pilot who ejects from a destroyed fighter, somehow survives in the vacuum of space long enough to be rescued, and then demands to get back in another fighter immediately? Zhaan stared at me. Those incidents were anomalies. Every single thing the humans did was an anomaly. That's the pattern. The anomaly is the pattern. Your pessimism is noted. My fleet will not repeat your mistakes. Your fleet will make new mistakes. Because you're treating this like a tactical problem when it's a philosophical one. You can't defeat an enemy who's already accepted defeat as preferable to surrender. Zhaan stood, indicating the meeting was over. Thank you for your input, analyst. It has been illuminating. I left knowing I'd failed. Zhaan was going to attack, the humans were going to fight, and more people were going to die for absolutely no reason. I was proven right in the worst possible way. The Second Fleet jumped into the Sol system exactly 6 months after the First Fleet had retreated. 400 ships this time. Better weapons, better shields, better tactics. It didn't matter. The humans had spent those 6 months preparing too. They'd analyzed our technology from the debris they'd collected. They'd reverse-engineered our weapons. They'd studied our tactics and developed counters for every single one. But more than that, they'd gotten angry. The First Fleet had been met with military resistance, professional, efficient, strategic. The Second Fleet was met with something else entirely, rage given form and purpose. The humans had militarized everything. Their civilian ships had been converted to warships. Their space stations were now weapons platforms. They'd scattered millions of mines throughout their system, each one a primitive nuclear device that their computers guided with terrifying accuracy. And they'd sent a message, broadcast on every frequency we monitored. Admiral Vasquez appeared on screen again, but this time she wasn't alone. Behind her stood dozens of other humans in various uniforms and civilian clothes. Young, old, every shade of skin color, every body type, united. "You came back," Vasquez said, and her voice was ice wrapped in steel. "We told you to leave, we warned you, we demonstrated our willingness to fight. And you came back anyway." She paused, and every human behind her moved slightly forward, a synchronized gesture of solidarity that sent chills down my backplates. "So now you get to learn what happens when you mistake mercy for weakness, when you confuse warning shots with our best effort, when you think humanity at war is humanity at its limit." Another pause. "You're about to discover you were wrong." The transmission cut, and the humans attacked. I watched from Vortan Prime through the real-time feeds. I watched as the humans unveiled weapons they'd built in 6 months. Plasma cannons reverse-engineered from our own technology. Energy shields adapted from salvaged Vortan systems. Fighters moving at speeds that should have torn human bodies apart, except they'd apparently developed inertial dampening from studying our ships. They'd learned. They'd adapted. They'd improved. In 3 days, Zhaan's fleet was gone. Not retreated. Gone. 400 ships reduced to debris and distress signals. Zhaan himself survived, barely. He made it back to Vortan Prime with maybe 30 ships, most of them heavily damaged. I was at the landing bay when his flagship arrived. He looked broken. Not physically. Physically he was fine. But something in his eyes had shattered. "They were supposed to be primitive," he whispered when he saw me. "The models said, all the analysis confirmed, they should have been overwhelmed. The models were wrong." "How can the models be wrong? We've used the same predictive algorithms for 1,000 years. 473 successful integrations. 473 species that valued survival over pride," I said. "The humans don't. They value being human over being alive. That's insane. Yeah, that's what makes them dangerous." The council convened again. Emergency session. Maven was there, looking older somehow. The failure of 2 fleets had done what age couldn't. It had shaken her certainty. "This council," she began slowly, must consider alternative approaches to the soul situation. Alternative approaches, not giving up, not admitting defeat. Just alternatives. We could isolate them, someone suggested. Quarantine their system, prevent them from expanding beyond their borders. With what fleet? Another council member asked. We've lost 600 ships. Our military capacity is depleted. And for what? One system? One stubborn species? They're a threat. Maven insisted. Any species this aggressive, this resistant to integration, represents a threat to collective stability. Or, a new voice spoke up, and I was shocked to see Dr. Fenn standing at the chamber entrance. Security was already moving toward her, but she kept talking. Or they represent an opportunity. Who authorized your presence here? Maven demanded. Nobody. I'm unauthorized and uninvited. But I'm also the only person in this chamber who actually understands what you're dealing with. Remove her. Wait. I stood up, surprising myself. Let her speak. What have we got to lose? Maven glared at me, but gestured for Fenn to continue. You're trying to integrate the humans into the collective, Fenn said. But integration assumes they want what we're offering. Safety, stability, structure. The humans don't want any of that. They want freedom, even if freedom means danger. They want autonomy, even if autonomy means hardship. They want to choose their own path, even if that path leads off a cliff. So what do you propose? Leave them alone. The chamber erupted in clicking mandibles. Leave them alone? Abandon a strategic system? Accept defeat? Not defeat, Fenn raised her voice. Diplomacy, trade, cultural exchange, mutual respect. Everything we don't do because we've never had to. The humans don't need to join the collective. But they could be allies if we stop trying to conquer them. Maven was silent for a long time. Then, finally, she spoke. And if we leave them alone, what's to stop them from eventually becoming a threat? They've proven they can defeat our fleets. What happens when they develop faster than light travel? When they start expanding? When they decide they want revenge for our attacks? Then we'll deal with that, I said. But at least we'll deal with it as equals, rather than conquerors and conquered. The vote took 3 hours. In the end, the council decided to do something unprecedented in collective history. Nothing. We would leave the Sol system alone, no more integration attempts, no quarantine, no interference. We would monitor from a distance, establish diplomatic channels if the humans were willing, and otherwise pretend they didn't exist. It wasn't victory, it wasn't defeat. It was something new, something uncomfortable, something necessary. 6 months later, I received a transmission on a secure channel. It was from Admiral Vasquez. Analyst Krell, she said, and I noticed she was smiling slightly. We've been monitoring your communications. We know the collective has decided to leave us alone. That's good. That's smart. I'm glad you approve, Admiral. Here's the thing, though. We're not interested in staying isolated forever. We want to explore the galaxy. We want to meet other species. We want to trade, to learn, to grow. But on our terms, as equals. Can the collective handle that? I thought about it, about everything we'd learned, about all the certainty we'd lost and the uncertainty we'd gained. I don't know, I admitted, but I guess we're going to find out. Vasquez's smile widened. Good answer. See you out there, Krell. The transmission ended. That was 2 years ago. The humans have since developed their own version of faster-than-light travel. They're exploring neighboring systems. They've made contact with a dozen species. Some of those species tried to conquer them. Those species no longer try to conquer anyone. As for me, I'm still an analyst. But now I specialize in human behavior, helping other species understand what they're dealing with before they make the same mistakes we did. It's not a popular job. Most species don't want to understand humans. They want to defeat them, integrate them, or avoid them. But some are learning. Some are realizing that humanity isn't a problem to solve or a threat to eliminate. They're just a species that refuse to understand why they should surrender and refuse to retreat when we couldn't understand them. And you know what? The galaxy is more interesting for it. Dr. Fenn once told me that every species the collective had successfully integrated was, in some way, diminished by the process. Made smaller, made safer, made more like us. The humans refused to be diminished. And in doing so, they made the rest of us bigger. I still don't fully understand them. I don't think anyone does, including other humans. But I've learned something important. Some things aren't meant to be understood. They're meant to be respected. And humanity? Humanity earned that respect one impossible victory at a time.